Do, re.
Be gone.
2 in the box.
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They be slow.
wow.
All right, suck in the guts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
Hey everyone, it's the Miserable Movie Man back again with another video. Some folks were complaining that it wasn't too pleasant seeing my face when talking, so I'm deciding to try something different in this video. This video is all about Ghostbusters 2. Let's clear one thing up right away though. It's not as good as Ghostbusters 1. That film was and always will be a classic that everyone loves. Ghostbusters 2, well, not so much. I still love it, and I'll get into some reasons why shortly. But in terms of sequels, I thought it was a pretty good one. Certainly it wasn't a bad sequel. I'm looking at you, Speed 2. And it wasn't a film that was better than the original, like Terminator 2, Empire and others. Most people tend to forget about it though, and I feel it doesn't get the love that it deserves. And as someone who tends to love things that others overlook, this video will give you my top 5 reasons, and there are plenty more, why I think Ghostbusters 2 is still a great movie. One thing has to be said to give the film some context though, is the fact that when Ghostbusters 1 came out, no one knew anything about it, let alone the fact it would be a mega hit. It wasn't a giant toy machine, and Dan Aykroyd struggled to get studios on board with his original idea. Now, cut to 5 years after the first one, and bear in mind that the real Ghostbusters was a hit cartoon as well, which brought a whole new audience of kids to the franchise, and the sequel was bound to be, well no, it had to be kid-friendly. This certainly takes the edge off the second movie compared to the first, but the sequel is still pretty enjoyable. And fun fact, the reason the cartoon was called The Real Ghostbusters instead of just Ghostbusters is due to a talking gorilla. The sequel also did pretty well at the box office, and you have to remember that in 1989 it was up against Back to the Future 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Batman. 1989 was an incredible year for movies, and Ghostbusters 2 still did pretty well, taking over 200 million, although with a higher budget than the first. And because the return wasn't as big as the original, the studio pulled the plug on a third film. So, noting the new toned-down approach to the sequel, let's get into my top 5 reasons why I love Ghostbusters 2. And if you enjoy this video, please drop a like and comment below, and subscribe to the channel. I love the fact that after the first film, things didn't quite work out for the gang, and they've gone their separate ways. It's a bold move. I mean, maybe people were expecting Ghostbusters to be a franchise in every town after the first film, but really for that you need a never-ending supply of Hittite deities living in spook centrals, all looking to come back. So it's great to see that Egon has become a very successful scientist, and of course Peter has his own talk show, which is pretty close to Dana's prediction from the first film. Only Ray and Winston are left to try and keep the flame alive, and they're not even catching ghosts, just dealing with pretentious little yuppie larvae who prefer to see He-Man. A couple of other fun facts. The experiment Egon is doing about how emotions can affect things in real life is pretty much the premise of the slime, and Venkman's guest who predicts that the world will end on New Year's Eve was almost spot on if Vigo had had his way. Of course, Dana being the catalyst that brings the crew back together is a bit of suspension of disbelief. But there was a deleted scene where she asks a question about why it's always her, similar to Bruce Willis in Die Hard 2, which came out after this film, by the way. So I really enjoyed the fact that the times have moved on, the original gang have gone their separate ways, and now they have to come back together for the new threat that's coming. Some people may disagree with me, but I think this film has a really great soundtrack. I'll get onto the main song in a minute, but as a fan of R&B and hip-hop, I was a big fan of this soundtrack. There's some legendary artists in here, such as New Edition, Run DMC, and even Elton John and Glenn Frey. And then we have the magnificent Higher and Higher, which I defy anyone not to sing along to when they hear it. Spirit by Dougie Fresh has an incredible beat and is hugely underrated in my opinion. The remix of the Ghostbusters theme by Run DMC is almost as good as the original for me. In fact, when I hum the song, it's usually the sequel version that sticks in my mind. And then of course there's the absolute classic Bobby Brown track and main song, On Our Own. I'm a huge Bobby Brown fan and I think this may be his best song. The video was a huge event and Bobby Brown was at the peak of his fame when they signed him. In fact, they even paid him a cool $1 million for his 10-second cameo in the film as a doorman. The single, On Our Own, stayed in the charts for quite a while and it did really well. So the film, has a really great soundtrack and I have that on my personal devices to listen to whenever I want. Just like Die Hard, Batman Returns and Young Sherlock Holmes, I love watching this film at Christmas. I think the setting really adds to the magic of the film for me. Seeing the scenery, watching the dark nights and the dreary days really gives it a great sense of atmosphere. Some scenes, like when Janosz is possessed and the slime starts causing havoc, are scarier than the first film in my opinion. The film isn't really that bright, and a lot of the set pieces were inside or at night. There are a few scenes where the Ghostbusters are wearing Christmas hats, and then at the end everyone is singing together to bring in the new year. Actually, Viggo wasn't that smart in coming back during the season of Goodwill and group singing. If he came back in summer, he would have ruled forever. The spirit of the film is a very positive one, and the end message of how the way you feel and treat others is very uplifting to watch for the holidays. And who doesn't enjoy the sight of the Statue of Liberty, walk into the museum, being controlled by an NES joystick? Trust me, turn the lights down low, watch this at Christmas, and you won't be disappointed. The first film was very sharp in the writing and comedy, and it had a lot of edgier adult humour. While the second one is more kid-friendly, so the humour is definitely toned down, I actually laugh out loud more in this film. There are far more jokes, and they seem pretty organic to me. Egon tells his assistant to take away the puppy. Venkman has a brilliant end to his talk show, and Rick Moranis and Peter MacNicol are hilarious in this film. I'll get to Peter MacNicol in a second, so no prizes for guessing what my fifth and final point is. But even Janosz aside, there's some brilliant setups in this film. Lewis in the courtroom scene, both in what he says and being led by Venkman. There's the scene where they're posing as construction workers and get called out on it. Then the cop says to Venkman,
"Hey, you're not with Con Ed or the phone company. We checked. So tell me another one."
I got a major gas leak here. Where do you think all this is coming from? The sky?
to even the date scene between Lewis and Janine. All of these scenes are hilarious. In fact, let me mention that I loved what they did with Lewis's character in this film. He wasn't in the cartoon, but Janine and Slimer were, and they found a way to bridge that gap in this movie. I find Lewis hugely more comedic in this film than the first one, and this isn't even counting all the perfect one-liners that Venkman gets to deliver. I know the experience kind of ruined the franchise for Bill Murray, but that's a real shame to me, as I still think he kills in this film. And also there's a bit of growth and a small arc for his character. Plus, I would love to see more World of the Psychic.
Now, Barrett?
Room 304, restoration.
Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Pinkman.
Yes.
World of the Psychic.
That's right. How you doing?
Hey, I'm a big fan of yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
It used to be one of my two favorite shows.
You're kidding me. Oh, great. What was the other one?
Bassmasters. It's a fishing show.
Yeah, I know Bassmaster, sure.
So let's get on to the best thing about Ghostbusters 2, in my opinion. Peter MacNicol as the legendary Janosz Poha. His performance is hugely underrated in my opinion, and he pretty much steals every scene he's in. He's that good that he makes Bill Murray take a back seat. Everything he says and does is gold, from pulling the little white thing from Dana's hair, to the way he apologizes for his woo! Even the way he interacts with Viggo is hilarious after he tires of hearing Viggo's titles. He knows he's dealing with someone evil, but he's so put upon that he'll make a deal with the devil to get what he wants. And the way he asks for things always makes me laugh. Another fun fact, the character was originally pretty nondescript, but Peter MacNicol came up with a backstory that he should be from Eastern Europe, and also from Carpathia, and hence why he knows so much about Vigo and why Vigo first speaks to him. And he even designed his own Carpathian flag. MacNicol has so many great lines in the film, and even when he's not speaking, his mannerisms are absolutely hilarious. To this day, I still use his line for as many situations as possible.
If everything you're doing is bad, I want you to know this.
So there you have it, my 5 reasons as to why I still love Ghostbusters 2. It's not better than 1, but I still think it's a really, really enjoyable film if you give it another chance, and especially if you watch it at Christmas. So what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.